Hello, I'm Lucy, I'm a fine art beader and I paint with beads. So welcome to Beading for Beginners, and today we're going to talk all about the peyote stitch. Now the peyote stitch looks like this, and it looks very similar to the brick stitch. However, the thread is travelling through the beads very differently. Within the brick stitch we're going along the rows in this way, whereas in peyote we're going through staggered rows of beads or columns of beads, depending on how you want to look at it. So it is very different. It certainly bends in this direction very well. The edge is very nice, and it bends less well in this direction. But depending on how tight your weave is, it can be quite drapey. Now the thread runs through each bead twice, meaning that it's not too hungry on thread. And after you get through the first two foundation rows, it's really quick and easy to progress through the work. In fact, it was the thought of doing those foundation rows that actually put me off doing peyote to begin with, until you get used to it. But I know it's some people's most favourite stitch. The other point about peyote is when you are reading the patterns, you are having to go across staggered beads, and people can find that quite difficult to read. So I either use post-it note, well, I'm always using post-it notes for my bead patterns as I progress, or use a drawing board with a ruler that you can slide up and down as you progress through the work. And some people find that quite hard to see the staggered beads as you progress. So the kit. The needle doesn't have to be too long because you're only going to be going through one bead at a time. Beading mat, normal beading thread, and as I always say, get the best quality beads that you can. I tend to use size 11s, Icos, Treasures or Delicas. I'm using size 8 Delicas here today just for demonstration purposes. But just get as uniform and consistent a size and shape as you can, unless of course you want a different sort of effect. You will get different effects with different shaped beads and different size beads. So as normal, get your thread, your beading thread, and as I say, you normally take 2 lengths of this, but for demonstration purposes I'm only going to take 1 length, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a tug just to condition it a little bit, get this twist out of it a little bit. And it's wax thread, slightly wax thread, so it's good for shapes. And then we need to thread it. So there we go, threaded. Very straightforward. Okay, so we're about ready to begin. Now, a couple of other points are that as a beginner, it's always useful to start with the simplest thing. So what I'm going to do today is do what's called even count peyote. So there's an even number of columns across the piece. And that makes it very easy to come back the other way. There's something called odd count peyote, which I'll talk about in another video, but you need to do a special turn to travel back again through the piece. And when I've gone through the first classic technique of starting off peyote, I'll also talk about an aid that I have discovered quite recently that turns this into a dream, makes it really, really easy to do. So I'll do that a little bit after this. So we are ready to begin. We will put a stop bead on the end and sew through that and pull that tight to keep it in place. And as we're doing even count peyote, we're going to take 4 blue beads, 4 red beads, and 4 green beads. Now this is where it gets really tricky, when you have to remember that these beads are going to be staggered up and down the row. And these 12 beads that I've added on are actually the first 2 rows, not the first row, but the first 2 rows as they go up and down by half a bead. So we're now going to add the 3rd row. And so we're going to start with the green and miss that first bead, but go through the second bead on there. And as you pull it tight, hopefully you'll see that it drops into 2 beads above each other, and then the rest follow. The next green bead, you miss out the 3rd bead along, and you go into the last green bead. And again, you should see the staggering effect coming into play. I'm going to do the red, so miss a red, go into the next red. And this is why you're doing an even count peyote, because as you'll see when you get to the end, it's really easy to turn around and come back the other way. So I'm just continuing here, adding some more beads as we go. If you can hear any noises off camera, that's because we've got a bit of a gale going on around the house. So there'll be some odd creaks and rumbles and so on. Okay. So when we've got to the end of this, we should see a piece of work that looks like this. And it's easy enough to turn it round and come back the other way. And you just continue in this fashion until you build your piece of work up. And that's what makes it so easy. It seems so quick once you're over that first hurdle of the first 2 or 3 rows, and you just keep going. So easy, so simple. It is some people's most favourite stitch. Okay. And it's so relaxing, almost as relaxing as brick stitch, I would say. Okay, so that is how you progress with peyote. So the second method that I want to show you is using an aid, and I discovered this recently, and I have no association with them, but it's called Quick Start Peyote by Deb Muffet Hall, and this happens to be for size 11 beads. And I've tried it and it really works. You get 3 little pieces of card in there, they're reusable, and you fold them over, and it's very, very straightforward. In fact, you can, as I have here, sellotape 3 together, and there I wanted to do more than 60 columns in a row, and it was so fast and fabulous. And you can get this in different sizes, it seems, so I have sent away for the different size beads as well, so I will experiment with those, and that opens up a whole world of peyote. Peyote is a really versatile stitch. Because it's staggered by half a bead, you can make really nice shapes, and also because the way it threads, you can also increase and decrease the beads within the rows, creating different shapes. So I'm going to cover increasing, decreasing beading within another video, plus the odd count peyote, where you need to do a special turn to come back the other way, because it's very different to even count peyote. So happy beading. I'm Lucy, I'm a fine art beader, and I paint with beads. See you next time.